SUA, I never expected a stranger to look at me like he had been waiting 2 years for me to come back. Noah Bennett had always believed weddings were designed for people who knew exactly where they belonged. He was the person standing near the edge of the ballroom, holding a glass of sparkling water, pretending he wasn't counting the minutes until he could leave. The Whitmore family wedding was beautiful in the kind of way that made ordinary people feel invisible. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, soft music floated through the room, and every guest seemed to know exactly which conversation to join and which smile to wear. Noah adjusted the sleeves of his dark blue suit and reminded himself that he was only there because his best friend had asked him to come. Nothing more. No pressure. No awkward introductions. No mysterious strangers. That plan lasted exactly 43 seconds. "You're sitting in my seat." The voice behind him was calm, deep, and far too confident. Noah turned around and immediately forgot the clever response he had prepared in his head. Alexander Whitmore stood there like he belonged on the cover of every business magazine in America. 42 years old, billionaire founder of Whitmore Technologies, an alpha whose reputation was built on impossible deals, quiet authority, and a personality people described as colder than winter. Noah had seen his name online before. Everyone had. But seeing him in person was different. The room seemed to become smaller. "I'm sorry," Noah said quickly, moving his glass. "I didn't realize this seat was reserved." Alexander looked at him for a moment too long. Not in a rude way. Not even in a curious way. It was something stranger. Something that made Noah feel like Alexander was searching through a memory. "It wasn't," Alexander finally said. "Not until tonight." Noah blinked. "That doesn't make any sense." A small expression crossed Alexander's face. Almost a smile. Almost sadness. Then he sat beside him. For the next few minutes, Noah tried to focus on the ceremony. He tried to ignore the impossible presence beside him. But Alexander was quiet in a way that felt intentional. Like he was choosing every word carefully. "Do you always avoid crowded rooms?" Alexander asked. Noah glanced over. "Do you always ask strangers questions like you already know the answer?" Instead of being offended, Alexander looked almost relieved. "Yes," he said softly. "When it's you." Noah's heartbeat changed. Not because of romance. Not yet. Because confusion had a way of making every small detail feel louder. The way Alexander remembered his name before Noah introduced himself. The way his eyes followed Noah's expressions like he was comparing them with something only he could see. Finally, Noah couldn't ignore it anymore. "Have we met before?" he asked. Alexander looked down at the table. For the first time that evening, the billionaire alpha didn't look powerful. He looked like someone carrying a secret. "I wondered if you would ask that." Noah frowned. "Why?" Alexander reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked the screen and turned it toward Noah. At first, Noah didn't understand what he was looking at. Then he froze. It was him, Noah Bennett, standing outside a small coffee shop, wearing the same gray hoodie he had owned 2 years ago. A photograph he had never seen before. A photograph he didn't remember anyone taking. "Where did you get this?" Noah whispered. Alexander looked at him with an emotion Noah couldn't name. "Because 2 years ago, I met you." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Alexander's words stayed between us, heavier than the music coming from the ballroom behind us. I was not the only one who remembered that day. I repeated his sentence quietly, trying to understand what he meant. Who else remembered? Alexander looked at me with a calmness that somehow made me more curious. "You did." I frowned. "I did not." "Not with your mind," he said, "but with the way you reacted when you saw me tonight." I looked away. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But the truth was, from the moment I sat beside him, something about Alexander felt strangely familiar. His voice, his presence, the feeling that I had met him before in a place I could not reach. "There was a reason I knew you would ask about the photos," Alexander continued. "Because 2 years ago, you asked me the same question." My eyes widened. "I did." He nodded. "You asked why I remembered small things about you." The city lights reflected in the glass beside us, and suddenly I felt like I was standing between two versions of my life. The one I remembered and the one Alexander described. "What did I say?" I asked. Alexander smiled softly. "You said you were not used to people paying attention." The words touched something inside me, because they sounded exactly like something I would say. I had always believed being noticed was something that happened to other people. Not me. Not someone who spent most of his time quietly working behind a computer screen, creating art that strangers might never see. Why did I forget? I whispered. Alexander did not answer immediately. Instead, he handed me the photograph again. Maybe you did not forget everything. I looked at him. What does that mean? It means some memories are not stored in one place. He placed a hand over his own chest. Sometimes they stay here. The simplicity of the answer surprised me. I expected a complicated explanation. Instead, he gave me something much harder to understand. A feeling. A connection. Noah, Alexander said gently. I never wanted to bring you back into my life by making you feel like you owed me anything. That sentence caught my attention. Then what did you want? He looked at me for a long moment. I wanted to know if the person I remembered was still there. My expression softened. Because for the first time, I realized something important. Alexander was not chasing the past. He was trying to understand the present. The version of me standing in front of him now. The person I had become after 2 years. Before I could respond, the wedding coordinator called guests back into the ballroom for the next part of the celebration. Alexander stepped aside and let me walk first. No pressure. No expectations. Just patience. As we returned to the lights and laughter, I looked down at the old photograph in my hand. 2 years ago, I had no idea someone would remember that moment. Tonight, I was beginning to wonder if maybe I had been waiting to remember it too. The wedding continued around us, but somehow everything felt different after that conversation. I no longer saw Alexander Whitmore as the unreachable billionaire alpha everyone talked about. I saw a person who had been carrying a memory quietly for 2 years, waiting for a moment that might never come. That thought stayed with me as we returned to our seats. I watched him greet guests, answer questions, and exchange polite smiles with people who admired him. He looked exactly like the man described in newspapers. Confident, controlled, impossible to read. But now I knew there was another side hidden underneath. A side that remembered small details about someone like me. You are thinking too loudly, Alexander said suddenly. I turned toward him. What? A small smile appeared on his face. Your expression changes when you are trying to solve something. I looked away, slightly embarrassed. You really noticed everything, did you? Not everything, he replied. Only the things that mattered. That answer stayed with me. I had spent so much of my life trying not to take up too much space. I was the person who sat quietly at gatherings, who listened more than he spoke, who avoided attention whenever possible. Yet somehow, this person beside me had noticed me when I thought nobody was looking. After the ceremony ended, guests moved toward the reception area. The room transformed with soft lights, flowers, and tables filled with conversation. Alexander and I found ourselves sitting together again, and this time the silence felt less strange. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Did you ever think you would see me again? Alexander looked at his glass for a moment. No, his honest answer surprised me. Never. I hoped, he said, but I tried not to expect it. I studied his face. Why? He looked at me. Because I did not want my feelings to become a responsibility you had to carry. That was not the answer I expected. I thought someone like Alexander Whitmore would always take what he wanted. But he had spent 2 years doing the opposite. Waiting. Respecting a choice I did not even remember making. You are very different from what people say about you, I said. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment? I smiled slightly. I think so. For the first time that night, he laughed. It was quiet and genuine. Not the polished expression from business interviews. Not the careful smile from public events. Just a simple reaction from a person enjoying a conversation. Then a waiter approached with a small envelope. Mr. Whitmore, this was delivered for you earlier. Alexander looked surprised. He opened it carefully and froze for a moment. I noticed the change immediately. What is it? I asked. He looked at the envelope, then at me. Something I thought I had lost forever. He handed it to me. Inside was a handwritten note. My handwriting. My name. A message dated 2 years ago. And when I read the first sentence, my entire understanding of that night began to change. Alexander, if you are reading this, it means I finally found the courage to tell you the truth. The handwriting on the page was mine. I knew it before I finished reading the first line. The shape of every letter, the way I crossed certain words, the small details that made my writing imperfect but familiar. My hands felt strangely cold as I held the note. Alexander, if you are reading this, it means I finally found the courage to tell you the truth. I looked up at him. I wrote this. Alexander nodded slowly. Yes. The noise of the reception seemed to fade away. The laughter, the music, the conversations around us became distant. All I could hear was my own voice reading words I had forgotten. I do not know what happens next, but I know I do not want this moment to disappear. I swallowed and continued. You made me feel like I was someone worth remembering. My eyes moved back to Alexander. He was watching me carefully, not interrupting, not trying to explain. He was letting me discover the truth on my own. Why did I write this? I asked. Alexander looked down for a moment. Because that night, you told me you were afraid of being forgotten. The sentence touched something deep inside me. I remembered the feeling. Not the exact moment, but the emotion. The fear of spending my life creating things that nobody noticed. The fear that people only saw what I could provide, not who I really was. I remember saying that. I whispered. Alexander's expression softened. You do? I closed my eyes for a second. A small image appeared. A quiet conversation. Warm lights. A feeling of safety. It was not a complete memory, but it was enough. Enough to prove that something between us had been real. Why did I lose these memories? I asked. Alexander answered honestly. I do not know, but I never wanted to force you to remember. I looked at him. Even after searching for 2 years? He nodded. Even then, that answer changed something inside me. Because I realized Alexander had never been trying to claim a place in my life. He had been protecting my choice. He had waited for me to decide. You could have told me everything tonight, I said. You could have walked up and explained our history. A quiet smile appeared on his face. Would you have believed me? I laughed softly because the answer was obvious. Probably not. I would have thought the entire situation was impossible. But now, with the photos, the note, and the emotions I could not explain, the impossible felt different. It felt like a missing piece finally returning. What happened after I wrote this? I asked. Alexander looked toward the wedding lights glowing across the room. After that night, you left a message saying you needed time to figure things out. I stared at him. I did. Yes. And I respected that. For the first time, I understood the true meaning behind all the photographs. They were not proof of a past I had lost. They were proof of a person who had believed I would find my way back when I was ready. Alexander gently placed the note back in the envelope. Noah, you do not have to remember everything tonight. He paused. You only have to decide what you feel now. I looked at him, and for once, I stopped searching for the missing memories. Because maybe the most important part was not what happened 2 years ago. Maybe it was what I wanted to happen next.